Hi, welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One nerds. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your baby one more time host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the 1998 season to commemorate Eddie Jordan. So let's go. Hi, this is Luigi. We wanted to let you know that we had some minor alignment issues with this episode, but it's 95% good. So enjoy. Yes, that song is that old.
That makes me feel so old.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
But young people still like Britney Spears. So it's not like she's aged.
No. I've aged. That's what's happened.
It's a bit of a shock to the system, but we're not here to talk about Britney Spears.
No, we're not. Because, yes, we woke up, was it yesterday, Louis, or maybe the day before our time? Or it was that night, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we were all very sad to hear that Eddie Jordan has passed away. He was 76 and he had a long and tough battle with cancer.
Yeah, but not that tough. When I say, I've had people pass away from cancer in my family, as many people have too. But he was really active right up to the end. Like you wouldn't have known.
And not many, it wasn't very well known, I don't think. I think very few people knew exactly what he was battling. So
yeah. How did you feel when you heard the news? Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's a name that I know. It's a name that is in my era of Formula One. You know, I knew of him. I knew that he was a team principal and that, he was one of the underdogs really of the F1 grid. And he was very outspoken and he had a lot of opinions that were probably different to a lot of other people's opinions about drivers and things. So, yeah, I was very sad to hear that he'd passed. What about you?
Yeah, I felt really sad too, and it made me think, why did I feel sadder when he passed versus when Frank Williams passed? Now, Frank Williams passed before we did this podcast, so
yes.
we should probably do one to commemorate his first win in 78, I think. But we're going to get to 78 soon anyway, so we'll just acknowledge it when we get there.
We'll just do it, yes.
But I think the reason why I mentioned that is because I realised that I had more of a connection to Eddie Jordan because he was such a underdog challenger, and that really resonated with me and maybe a lot of other people. Because Frank Williams, people didn't remember him as a challenger, but he was. He was a challenger in the 70s.
He was in the 70s.
He was a challenger in the years when we were watching. Yeah,
that's what I mean. He was really in my time of watching Formula One, and the whole Eddie Jordan teams really came into that 90s era, that early 90s. And so I kind of really remember him from there. So, yeah, it did have it was more relevant, I guess, in my time of Formula One.
Yeah, and when you think about the fact that the Jordan team, and we're going to go through some of his stats, but the team only won 4 races in their two. But for 4 races, their profile punches way above
huge.
that. I mean, there's teams that have like BRM. Everyone's forgotten them, but no one's going to forget Jordan for decades. No one, because it's such a big profile name and big profile person.
Yes. Yeah, and he had some big moments. Like he's had a lot of big moments, Like when we were researching this, you could pick from half a dozen. We've picked one. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a little bit of his career, the person and what he's done, and then we're going to really go a bit of a deep dive into his 1998 Belgium race win, which was his first race win. And yes, I would encourage everyone to go and look that race up on YouTube because it is such a crazy race to watch. It was, as soon as you think it's going to calm down, something else happens. And I remember watching that race live, actually. We won't go too much into it. We'll cover that a little bit later. Yeah, we'll cover that a little bit later.
But one thing I will say is a lot of people referred to that race as the greatest rain race of all time. I wouldn't go so far as that.
No, like a lot happens.
It's a memorable race, and to the extent that when they did a survey some years ago, one of the most memorable Belgium Grand Prix, that was number 1.
And you can see why.
Yeah.
You can see why, but I wouldn't call it, I guess it is memorable because there's a lot of stuff that happens in there that's just shocking, but it's not great. Like no one comes off as like this great superstar.
No. There's no great drives, if you know what I mean.
Not at all. Yeah, I'll start. So let's start from the beginning. He was born in Dublin, Ireland, and initially he flirted with the idea of joining the priesthood. So he was going to become a priest, which I think is hilarious. He would have been the most unconventional priest ever. I know, but yeah, he was either going to become a priest or go into dentistry, which is fascinating. But instead, Luigi, and this is a very close to my heart, he became an accountant.
Yeah, not surprising. And you know, when he was saying he wanted to be a priest, he was being interviewed in another podcast when he was alive many years ago, and he was saying it with a total straight face that he thought he would have been a great priest.
Oh my gosh!
He would have actually engaged with a lot of rebellious people that were questioning their faith.
Yes,
that would have been
that's
perfect.
Right.
Yeah,
He would have been out there. But yes, in kids, if you want to get involved in Formula One, become an accountant. That's all I have to say.
Yeah,
accountancy takes you everywhere. Go accountants.
That's right. Yeah,
and this that financial knowledge of his would really help him in the future. Which, you know, when he got into actually owning his own Formula One team, things got tough. So the fact that he knew how to like financially manage something that big would actually help him a lot.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the money later because it's a big part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. So as an accountant, he worked for the Bank of Ireland and he spent a lot of time working in Jersey.
Yeah. Tax haven. Yeah. And in his early days, he was watching karts, and I don't know how to pronounce this, Rosa, but he was tackling the Boule Bay. Probably in Irish. I'm sure that's Irish.
It is,
It's probably pronounced completely differently.
Yeah, our apologies.
Yeah, so that obviously ignited a passion in the guy.
Yeah, so when he got back to Dublin, he got behind the wheel himself. He bought a car and he started entering the local competitions. So he well and truly caught the bug.
Yeah, and his rise was swift. Like, he was actually not that bad a driver. Like, by 74, he was the Irish karting champion. And by 75, he had moved into Formula 1600, Formula Ford 1600, which is probably a certain cylinder rating. And the next step was a transition to British F3 in 76. So he was making the steps of a person that was looking at a career in motorsport.
And heading into Formula One. Yeah, and then in 76 at Mallory Park, which I don't know, I should have looked up where that is, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in the UK, he had a massive accident and he broke both his legs. And so it kind of put his driving career, it sort of ended his driving career very prematurely. But he, true to his nature, and this is why a lot of people like Eddie Jordan, he refused to let it define him and he started plotting his next move, which would be team ownership. And like I said, I think that's how we really all remember him, as a team owner.
Absolutely. And this was like in his young 30s, because at that stage, Eddie Jordan realised not only was he not quite fast enough, but that he was also too old to make a living from motor racing. And he felt instead of being a sort of older racing driver, he could be a younger team boss, which is a really interesting pivot.
Yes, it is an interesting pivot. And he was if we think about our podcast, Luigi, and how many privateer teams we've seen, he was kind of like the quintessential privateer. Like, he started his own team, he bought a car, and in an era where there really weren't any independent teams left, like they were slowly fading away.
Yeah, and that's where it was really impressive that he managed to get over the line in the era when privateers were over.
That's right, exactly.
So, what was Eddie's first major breakthrough as a team owner?
That's you, Luigi. You're black.
I'm black, am I? Yeah. This is why I want my name there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We might need to edit that out, Louis.
We'll see. Oh, that's okay. They can hear the truth of it. We have a rough script, but we go off script, everyone.
We go off script, yeah.
I'm black text and Rose is blue, and I temporarily forgot what was my colour.
Yeah, I didn't.
So he started in Formula Atlantic, and he not only won the Irish Championship, but he also laid the groundwork for his long-term ambitions. So essentially, Eddie Jordan Racing was born. And then, so in 83, he actually was part of the group with Martin Brundle that took the fight to Ayrton Senna. And that proved that Eddie had a talent for spotting driver skill. And the heartbreak of losing that championship in 83 to Senna only fueled his ambition and drive. And in 87, with Johnny Herbert in another chassis, a Reynard chassis, he actually finally took the British F3 title.
Wow, Johnny Herbert. He was, okay. So that success in Formula 3 then led to Formula 3000, where his team battled against some of the best drivers in the world, which we would know these names now. John Lacey joined his team in 89 and he clinched the championship, and it cemented his place as a top-tier feeder team for Formula 1.
Yeah, so he had big ambitions. And I was going to say one of his talents that he felt was reading cut drivers, and he really had that as a young manager going forward. Do we talk about that later, Rosa? Or is this a good time to talk about that?
No, this is a good time.
Yeah, so one of the talents he felt he had was reading and identifying talent in a driver going forward. And he took a lot of pride in knowing that we've just named some drivers that all had careers in Formula One, very long careers, but most of his drivers ended up at Ferrari. And he took a lot of pride in that because he would be basically nurturing and building up these drivers. And then next thing, later in their career or straight after him, they're a Ferrari driver, and Ferrari don't exactly take noobs, if you know what I mean. So, yeah.
No. Well, maybe they do, Luigi. That's why they haven't been very successful of late. Anywho, moving right along.
So Alesi went to Tyrrell, Donnelly went to Arrows. They did that soon after their successful stints with Jordan in the feeder series. Yeah.
He was also really good at like driver contracts and team negotiations. Like he was just a good businessman as well because of his background in accounting rules, everyone. Yeah, so that was good.
Yeah, so by 91, this is where it becomes real. Eddie Jordan makes the big step into Formula One. He'd been spending, at that point, I think approximately 16 years in the lower formula. So just think about it like that. He certainly wasn't like, I'm just going to go straight to F1.
No.
He eventually thought, why not, sort of thing. And he established Jordan Grand Prix, and he built a state-of-the-art facility of the time opposite the Silverstone track. And that is actually the same location where Aston Martin's team operates, obviously with new facilities.
And we'll go into a little bit more detail about how Jordan became Aston Martin, but we'll go into that a bit later. So his first car was the Jordan 191, and it was a revelation. It was designed by Gary Anderson, and of course it had a Ford engine in this era, and it quickly gained a reputation for being fast and well-balanced. And the team scored its first points within its debut season, which was quite impressive for a newcomer, privateer, kind of underdog team.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, we're going to describe the car in a moment, but you have to think of 91. It was the year when Senna was winning his third world championship and dominating. Williams were massively on the rise and winning everything else. And only the top 6 cars scored points.
Yeah.
Not the top 10.
Not the top 10.
It was hard to get points. Yeah, so I'll give it a go to describe the car.
Yeah, this is an iconic car. Like everyone would remember this car.
Yeah, everyone that hasn't looked at it, because there might be some young listeners who've never seen it or heard it.
Yeah.
But this is a lot of people talk about the most beautiful Formula One cars in history, and this is normally in the top few in most people's minds that know the history of the sport. So it's a primarily green car with blue on the sides, on the side pods, and because it's clean and simple, it's got these awesome curves, and it's got this really nice 7-Up logo on the main body here up. So people think of it as the green 7-Up car.
Yeah. Or the Jordan of Michael Schumacher. That's the other way people remember it. It's British racing green, which is, it's kind of where Aston Martin is now. They're like British racing green, so they've gone back to their roots. But yeah, it's iconic. It's called, like you say, the 7-Up car. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an awesome, beautiful car. And it was lightweight, it was minimal, simple, and probably very cost effective, knowing Eddie Jordan. Like not cost effective to build and stuff.
Yeah.
And to run.
So in 91, he got a big break because when his regular driver, Bertrand Gachot, was jailed for an altercation with a London taxi driver, Eddie reluctantly agreed to give a young endurance racer named Michael Schumacher a shot. And we all know what happened next. It's legendary. Schumacher shocked the entire field and he qualified 7th at Spa, and he showed the car's potential and his own raw talent. Later in his life, and I think it was in that same interview that we listened to, Luigi, he talked about that whole Schumacher thing because, it sort of ended in a bit of controversy. So in that podcast, he said he rated 2 drivers in particular, a very young De Silva, who we now know as Ayrton Senna, and Michael Schumacher. He felt that Senna had more raw speed, but Schumacher was stronger in car placement. Louis, I think that's what you call racecraft.
Correct.
Which is interesting. I would have put them the other way around. I would have said Schumacher had more raw speed and Senna was better at racecraft. But that's interesting that he had it the other way around. Do you agree with him?
I actually do agree with Jordan. I would put Schumacher ahead of Senna.
That's surprising. You hardly agreed with him.
Yeah, I mean, funny. I didn't agree with Eddie Jordan much because he got a bit crazy, I think, in his latter years. Like, I don't know if he was saying things just for the sake of it to get attention.
No,
maybe.
I think he actually believed them.
Yeah, I think he believed them. But there's some really interesting stories about the Senna Schumacher thing. So to put in perspective, Senna only drove, I think, one of his F3 or F3000 cars. And it was very obvious to everyone there that this guy had unbelievable talent. But I don't know why people didn't sign others. But Jordan was very, very impressed with Senna and knew he was an unbelievable talent. But the interesting story is the Schumacher one, I think, which I think paints a picture. So because obviously he didn't really have that much experience with Senna. I think he played up a bit that he had, but he hadn't really. And even Schumacher, he didn't have that much. It was one test session and one race. So the week prior to that Belgium race, because Eddie Jordan was offered €150,000 per race, he was like, yes, I'll take this unknown driver, because he was hounded by some of the Schumacher management team that this guy's awesome. And Eddie Jordan was like, no, just tell me how much money he's got. Because that whole 91 season, Eddie Jordan was just surviving every race. It was a battle for him. So when the Schumacher opportunity came up, it was €150,000. Put him in the car the weekend prior to get some practice in it. And when he was doing the testing, Eddie Jordan wasn't there. The team rang him. I can't remember what the track was. The team rang him and said, oh, look, can you just check if the track has changed? And Jordan was like, why? And they said, because we think it's been shortened or something. And they genuinely didn't believe it. And then when Jordan said, no, the track has not changed, that's when they realised Schumacher's times were actually that fast.
Really fast.
They were in shock. They couldn't believe it. Yeah, so that's when Eddie Jordan realised this guy is an unbelievable talent. So it was worth more than, it must have been dream come true. Here's this unbelievable talent and €150,000.
Yes. So this is the start of the controversy, and it's interesting researching this because I didn't realise, I thought only the end of it was the controversy. So I didn't realise all this in between. So when Schumi did make his debut, Bernie Ecclestone, who at the time was in charge of Formula One, realised that ticket sales went through the roof, like by 20,000 ticket sales, and that he needed a German driver onto the grid to tap into this newfound money coming into the sport. But he was worried that Jordan wouldn't last a season because, as you said, Luigi, he was struggling financially, and we'll go into it a little bit later. And he thought, if Jordan don't last, I need Schumacher in another team. And he chose Benetton. So Bernie orchestrated that Schumi went to Benetton. Eddie got a bit of money for that, and Moreno would be out, who I'm assuming was in the Benetton seat.
Yes.
And Bernie instigated it all.
Yeah, it was funny because Jordan said it was basically him, Bernie Ecclestone and Flavio Briatore, who was the boss of Benetton at the time, just in a room. And his words were, Bernie Ecclestone just knocked our heads together until he got his way. And no doubt money and things like that were on the table. Eddie got some money to say, go away, I'm making this happen. And Flavio, and no doubt Eddie was upset. So
100%.
Yeah, so Eddie came up with a strategy. Do you want me to tell you the strategy?
Yeah,
it was very
keep
funny.
Going. Yeah.
This is a bit more detail, but it paints the picture of Eddie Jordan. He knew that there were some laws about stopping someone earning income from their primary skills, which is motor racing. So he convinced Moreno to put in an injunction against the Benetton team in Italy, because he was the one losing his seat, in order to block Benetton from running Shoemaker. And this forced Flavio to cut a deal with Moreno and Eddie Jordan. So Jordan got another batch of money. And he basically liked the idea of making Flavio squirm, because it was basically his revenge of being forced to give up Shoemaker. And
Yes.
I think Jordan took Moreno as well. So Moreno was like, I get a drive
And some money.
and some money probably. And so, yeah, it's pretty impressive. So typical Eddie Jordan, right?
Was that your phone?
That was my phone telling me that the sprint racing is on. We're recording this, everyone, just before the China 2025 sprint race, but we're going to watch it on catch up. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry about us. Yeah, so I didn't actually, I just thought that Flavio came in and took him and offered him more money. So I didn't realise it was a Bernie Eccleston deal. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, as we said, the early years for Eddie weren't without struggles. And in 92, he switched to Yamaha engines, and that didn't work at all. But he rebuilt, and he had Rubens Barrichello and Hart engines in 93, and they remained like a constant midfield team. But the real breakthrough came in 1998.
Yeah. And I mean, I hate to say it, but even when I was watching Formula One in these years, everyone knew you don't go to Yamaha. Yamaha had no Formula One credibility. Okay, they've got bike racing.
It's motorcycle, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a different animal, right? So with the Mugen Honda engines, they had a strong driver lineup of Damon Hill and Ralph Shoemaker, and they signed Damon Hill. We talk a bit more about why he signed up with them. But Jordan finally had his moment of glory at a rain-soaked, very crazy Belgian race, which we're about to review. And Hill led Shoemaker home for a stunning 1-2 finish. So not just a win, but a 1-2 as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. And again, this car that they did it in is iconic. So I'm just going to describe it now. It was it's the third year they had the Benson and Hedges as their main sponsor, but this 198 version was bright yellow, and it had like a hornet livery with a hornet's eye and head painted on either side of the nose cone, and wings and stripes on the side of the car. It looked amazing on the track. Like watching that race again, I was like, wow, that looks amazing. So at the Grand Prix, it didn't allow tobacco advertising because it had Benson and Hedges on their wing at the back and on the side pods. It was replaced with the Hornet-related Hornets. That's pretty cool.
That was when that was a loophole in the legislation, I think.
So yeah, I'd encourage you to go and look up this car if you've not watched it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool car. I really like this car too. It really stood out. It was very different to everything else on the track.
Really different. It had personality, you know. It looked like it looked like a fly, something flying, because it had like a face on it. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was actually a car that looked fast. And it was fast in 98.
It was.
So the 99 season brought more success, with Frentzen or even more success, I would say, with Frentzen winning at Magny-Cours and Monza, and even having opportunities to win other races, but having retirements towards the end where he could have won them. So they even emerged with Frentzen as their lead driver as a title contender. And finally, Jordan was no longer a team that just produced great drivers. It was a team that could actually be a contender.
But F1 is ruthless. And as the 2000s progressed, he found more and more that funding was becoming a challenge. And without the funding, the competitiveness of the team sort of started to fall away.
Yeah. And the early days of 91, this is how tough he had it. He had the bailiff calling him every Friday, and they were even on first name terms. And the bailiff would even tell him in advance, because they were friendly, don't answer the door at 2:30 p.m. on Friday. And so that gave him time to get things in order to not answer the door. So the bailiff would say, I couldn't get access, and walk away. And so that's how so it's not just the numbers game he played. He also played the relationship game. But
yes,
I don't think he I don't think he was playing a relationship game. I think he genuinely got on really well with that bailiff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And he has said that being an F1 team boss in that era was really, really stressful, and it's changed now. Like the people who were heading up teams in the past, like in this era, were the people taking the risks, whereas now a lot of the teams are corporate organizations and there's no person at the top. And so he said, he felt very proud that he left F1 having paid all of his creditors. Everyone got paid. He, left it better than what he found it. But it would have been so stressful for him. Like he would have had to make sure that he could pay everyone their salary every fortnight or whatever. So
yeah, that's really that's a good point. And I mean, it's he said even in 91 he didn't say what they were, but he had some serious medical issues, and he thinks it was 100% put on by Formula One. And I'm not surprised. Imagine that year. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So his last victory the Jordan team's last victory came at Interlagos in 2003 when Giancarlo Fisichella was awarded the win after a controversial race stoppage. So that's worth looking at as well, which we will do, in about 5 years' time, Luigi?
Yeah, probably, yeah. He did like the fact that he had Ron Dennis handing him the trophy at the Imola race following, I think. So he took some pride in making Ron Dennis do that, So
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so apparently by 2004, I see some records 2005, but it's probably signing of contracts and executing of contracts probably. But at 2004 or 5, Eddie decided to sell the team, and Bernie Eccleston played a key role in enabling that deal, and the team changed names.
What a surprise. He probably took a cut.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. He had his finger in every pie, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as we said, the team won 4 races, having started in 250 of them. So, but I think that doesn't really tell you the story of how competitive they were in that period.
Yeah. So basically, over the next decade, the Jordan team changed hands multiple times, running as Midland. So Midland and Spiker were very backfield teams, and then they got bought by VJ something, an Indian guy.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say Indian guy, I don't mean that in a racist way, because he came with a huge amount of money from Kingfisher, I think one of his airlines, and they ran the team for many years as a very successful team without huge spend. And then they changed to Racing Point when they were bought by Lawrence Stroll.
Yeah,
Lawrence is the dad, right?
Force India was when Sergio Perez was in Force India, wasn't he?
Yeah, and Racing Point, I think a little. I'm not sure. That was 1 year, 1 or 2 years. That was their transition year to Aston Martin. So it's the same location as the Jordan site back in 91 at Silverstone.
Yeah, and they're back in the British Racing Green.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
so pretty amazing. Yeah.
So even though he sold his team, he wasn't going to fade into the background. He reinvented himself as a TV commentator. And as we said, he was very outspoken. He had a lot of energy. He had a lot of opinions. He was funny. A lot of fans loved what he said and how he said it. I saw an interview where he was talking to a very young Max about whether he deserved a penalty, and Max goes, "No, I didn't deserve a penalty because I didn't get a penalty." And then he asked him, "Would you do it again?" "Yep, I would do it again." So, he was asking all the questions that no one else would ask. Yeah, and he had a lot of stories to tell about back in the day. So he became a very entertaining Formula One commentator as well.
Yeah, I think so. And he wasn't just about racing. He had a very deep love for music, and people often refer to his rock and roll style. So he had a band called, I don't know how successful or big this band was.
Neither do I.
No, Eddie and the Robbers. And they often played at Grand Prix after parties with Bernie Eccleston himself suggesting the name.
Oh, he probably took a cut there too. It's probably like band manager.
Oh, for sure. Funnily enough, he was even really good friends with Bono from U2.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so he was big. He was big in the sport. He was a risk taker. He was, as you say, Luigi, a talent scout. He was a big paddock favourite. So, and, he had a gift for making impossible things happen, whether it was finding sponsorship in the toughest times, securing factory support, or, signing champions.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, he had a talent of reading drivers and them going to Ferrari. And even in his final years, he never stopped making waves. And his role in the Adrian Newey. So we're recording this in, March 2025. And it was big news in late 24 when it was announced that Adrian Newey, one of the greatest designers of all time, was switching from Red Bull to Aston Martin. And it was pure Eddie Jordan,
Eddie Jordan,
because Eddie Jordan was sort of orchestrating the move and apparently was Adrian Newey's manager. And people didn't even know that they were good friends. So there you go. Talk about a pundit having very close ins on the sport.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Eddie was asked about what he thought his legacy was, and he said his legacy were his two Jordans, the iconic yellow one and the 7-Up Jordan. And he said his legacy was that he came in with very little and he left with more. But to him, it wasn't about the money. It was about, making sure that they left a lasting memory and that every supplier was paid and everyone was like, and that he felt that he left Formula One with a clear conscience without owing anything to anybody. So, I think as we say goodbye to him, I think we'll never forget him, I don't think. And there'll be another, I don't know, we can say there's not another Eddie Jordan on the grid now. I don't know whether there'll be another one, but there's certainly not one now.
It's not Lawrence Stroll, that's for sure. Lawrence Stroll's modelling himself after the Ferrari image.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, like you said, they're all corporate now, aren't they? They're all big organisations behind these Formula One teams, and you don't really get to see the person anymore. So, so that's a quick summary of his career. Okay, so we might leave it there then, and we'll come back in the next episode to do a bit of more of a deep dive into the first win for the Jordan team, which was the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. And if you do have time, go and watch it before you listen to us, because it's actually really exciting.
Well, it's good that it was a two-parter then, isn't it? Gives people the time to look up the cars at the images, 91, and watch the 98. They'll see the car.
Yeah, okay. So see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.